Welcome back everybody to another episode. Today's episode, guys, we have one that's been requested quite a bit, and I keep kind of putting it off, and I don't know why, because it's a great thing to learn. But today's episode, guys, we're going to be talking about flipping and pitching. Before we jump into today's episode, guys, we're going to talk about today's sponsor of the video, and today's sponsor of the video is Super K Jigs. If you guys have never heard of Super K Jigs, you're probably living under a rock if you guys have been watching my channel for some time. I love using a swim jig. I have one tied on at all times. What I love about Super K Jigs, guys, is all of their jigs, all these skirts here that you see on the jig, are hand tied, so they hold up a hell of a lot better than those other jigs. I've had plenty of other swim jigs where they're not hand tied, and those skirts, after like one or two catches, they just get pulled off, torn up. I will tell you what, these Super K jigs, they hold up, they last, they got really good hooks in them, and they're just a really good quality jig. So if you guys are looking to pick up any Super K stuff, they have a ton of jigs. They don't just have swim jigs, they have swim jigs, football jigs, flipping jigs, terminal tackle as well. They have everything. I will link Super K down below in the description. Also, I have a code that you guys can use. The code WW20 will save you guys 20% off of your order. So if you guys are looking at picking up any new swim jigs, this swim jig right here is actually a swim jig that I designed myself that is on their website. It's actually this month's jig. They have a monthly series jig thing they do, and this month is actually this jig right here. It's been absolutely fire. I've been catching a lot of fish off of it. So if you guys are interested, click that link down below in my description and use that code WW20 to save yourself some money. So today's episode, we're talking about flipping and pitching. Now, flipping and pitching are two different things. I don't do a lot of flipping. Flipping is kind of the old school way of doing things, but pitching is pretty much something that I use daily, or pretty much every single time that I'm out bass fishing. And it's a technique that can be a little difficult to learn at first, but once you learn how to pitch, I promise you, you will use it for everything. I pitch a ton when I'm pitching a jig around. I use it when I'm pitching a jig. Sometimes I'll even pitch a frog. Pitching is a great technique, especially when you're kind of close to things. So if you're close quarters, if you will, with a structure or dock or anything like that, a lot of times pitching is the way to go, especially if you also like to fish with a lot of other people, or even if you are a bank fisherman. A bank fisherman, this is huge. Learning how to pitch can help you get into some areas when you're bank fishing that you wouldn't be able to get into otherwise. When you're bank fishing, you have a lot of overhanging trees in your area, depending on where you're fishing, and a lot of times if you're trying to cast sidearm or over your head, you can't get your bait in there. So pitching is a great technique to learn. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of some setup and kind of how you want your reel geared for when you pitch, and then we're actually going to stand up and I'll show you guys how I pitch this weed line right here. So first things first, guys, I like to have a 7-foot to 7.3 medium heavy rod. I mean, you could pretty much pitch with whatever you're doing, but if you're learning how to pitch, I would suggest going with like a medium heavy rod and like a 7-footer. If you go too long of a rod, you're probably gonna end up smacking it in the water, things like that. So I would go with a 7-foot medium heavy rod. Now, when it comes to your reel, it really doesn't matter what the gear ratio is of your reel, but you're gonna wanna make sure that your brakes are turned all the way up, and also make sure you really play with your reel spool tensioner right here. This little knob on the side of the reel here, that kind of dictates how fast this bait drops. So you don't want it dropping super fast, because when you pitch and it hits the water, if you don't catch it right away, you're gonna over spool and backlash like crazy. But if it's too tight, when you pitch, it's just gonna go straight up in the air and then splash down. You want to pitch, keep it nice and low to the water, and dip right in there. So make sure you guys get a nice, like, steady fall, not too fast, but not too slow where it's not going anywhere. You want it to fall kind of steady. So when I click my bail here, it should fall steady like that. If it's too fast, it's gonna mess up. So one more time for you guys, when I click it, nice steady fall. So one other tip before we start, guys, is when you guys are flipping and pitching, I like to use a little bit heavier weight. I found out that if I'm using like an ounce or a ½ ounce tungsten, I can actually pitch better. The lighter it is, the tougher it is to pitch, in my opinion. The heavier it is, I think that you can kind of control it with your thumb a little bit better on the spool. So if it's really light, you can't like keep your finger right on the spool the entire time. But if it is like a heavier one, like, you know, ½ ounce to an ounce tungsten, when you pitch, you can keep your finger right on, or your thumb right on the spool the entire time, and really control that pitch through. So if I was you guys, I'd probably start with 3/8 to ½ ounce. That's probably a pretty good starting weight. An ounce will probably be a little too much for you, but a 3/8 to 1/2 ounce is probably a great weight to start with. Right, so now we're gonna start doing some pitching. So basically we have this weed line here, and a lot of times if I'm frogging and they're just not biting the frog, I'll just take out, you know, something to throw, like a big worm, hot summer day, and I'll just pitch this weed line right here. So a lot of times I like to basically let out enough line where I can grab the bait or lure that I'm using and basically level with my reel, if not a little bit more. So basically right here, and then what I'll do is I'll grab right by the weight, and then you don't want to grab the hook, but just kind of grab the weight or the line. Sometimes you could just hold the line like so, and then you just pitch. So we'll go ahead and start off with a couple here to show you guys. So all I'm going to do, like I said before, is grab this line, and then I'm just going to pitch. And as you can see, that stays nice and low to the water, and then I can just guide it with my rod. So a lot of times when you're pitching, you're just pitching into a specific area, and then you're kind of jigging it a little bit and pulling it out. So like I said, I'll grab the line like so, and it's a nice easy pitch over there. That was a little high. I'm not the best at it. It's not like you're gonna be absolutely perfect. A lot of dictating how this is gonna go, how you're going to pitch, is going to be you controlling the spool with your thumb. So like I said, you're just gonna work the weed line and pitch in there perfectly. It allows you to kind of get into the water nice and smooth and no other issues. All right, so now I'm gonna show you guys what it's like if I have this way too loose and way too tight. So I'm gonna loosen this up, the reel tension spool. This is really, really loose now. So this is dropping really fast. Now, if this is too loose, when you pitch, see how I backlashed right there? My reel is all backlashed because the tensioning knob here is way too loose, so it's causing me to backlash. Now, if I tighten it up, you guys will notice that the bait is basically going to go up and then splash down because there's not enough line being let out of the spool once I get this thing out. All right, so now I tightened the tensioning knob way up. Now I'll show you. I'm going to pitch here, and you see what it does right there? It's because when this spool, when the tensioning knob is so tight on your Baitcaster, on your reel, it doesn't allow line to come out as fast. So when you pitch, not enough line is coming out, and it causes your bait to basically go up into the air and then splash down. That's when you kind of can play with it and then start to loosen it up a little bit at a time. And what that's going to do is get it so your bait is falling nice and smooth, and then you're able to make a nice easy pitch. So we're just going to kind of troll up to the bank here. Now I know I've probably, you know, repeated myself several times, but this is where pitching comes in handy, is when we're up close to the bank like this. So we're only like, I don't know, 7-8 feet from the bank here. So this is where pitching is really going to start to take its effect, because you can get nice and close and get into those specific areas. As you can see on this weed line right here, there's all these little like kind of dips and pockets, and even on the other side of the weed line. If I'm casting, it's going to be really hard for me to like get right where I want to be. So with pitching, I can pinpoint. So if I want to get on the other side of those weeds right here, I can just pitch right in there perfectly every single time. Well, now I pitched right in there. I can pop it a few times and then pull it right back out. All right, so like I said before, guys, I can get right in there. So like you'll see these the weeds right here, then there's pockets in there, little pockets. So now I can go ahead, and now with pitching, I can get right into those pockets that I want to. I can drop it perfectly into those spots. If I'm casting, I'm gonna have a really hard time, and most of the time if you're casting, you're probably gonna splash pretty good and spook a fish in there if there is one. Alright, so that is how I do flipping and pitching. If you guys have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Also, go check out Super K, guys. I'll link them down below in the description. Use that code BW20. It's going to save you guys 20% off of your order. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you guys would like to see any other tips and tricks videos, please let me know down in the comments below. Otherwise, see you guys on the next one.